Out of all our available Warframes in the game, Octavia stands out as someone who has a very specific problem that no other Warframe really has right now, and that is that she is so unbelievably good that people don't want to play her because she is kind of boring. Not everyone shares this opinion, and I did bring this up in a video recently where people did say that they thought that my opinion on her being boring was based on the fact that I choose to play her in a very specific playstyle. I can somewhat agree with this, but also disagree. But in order to make a point and to explain why I think me and many other people don't play this Warframe, we've got to look at her abilities and what makes her quote-unquote boring, whilst at the same time being one of the most powerful Warframes in the game. Octavia is the music-themed Warframe. She has a passive in which you can set your specific music and songs, create your own sounds and tracks if you'd like, but most people tend to avoid this option and turn it off for the simple option of muting it and just implementing a constant beat so you can spam your crouch and easily get the buffs that come with your third ability. So yeah, this frame has an element of creativity and that can be implemented into your gameplay, but most people, including me, just can't be arsed and would rather just have a constant stream of beats that you can spam crouch to, or spam melee, spam shoot, or jump in order to get the buffs. Other than that, her actual passive allows her to gain a bit of energy regen for 30 seconds whenever she casts an ability. This will also apply to her teammates within range. It's an okay passive, nothing particularly special, and if you're building for a lot of duration, this is actually pretty damn good overall to keep you sustained. Her first being Mallet, which is without a doubt one of the most overpowered skills in the game. You'll throw down a little orb that produces music and takes enemies' attention, causing them to shoot the mallet and then redistribute that damage back at them, which scales off of overall enemy HP, basically causing them to eliminate each other. This is literally just the school bully ability, where your enemies are forced to sit there and you can just go, why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself? Stop hitting yourself. And this is aged particularly well because due to the recent armor changes that we got a few updates back, this can kill enemies even with pretty high armor values very quickly. It does have access to an augment that allows you to put down 2 of these at once, but with 20% reduced range. It's a solid augment, mainly a playstyle thing if you want to cut off multiple chokes. Her second ability, Resonator, is a moving ball that attracts enemies' attention, and instead of them shooting the ball, much like with her first ability, they will simply follow it. This has low-key levels of crowd control, basically just shutting down enemies within range and turning them into vegetables, and this orb will roll around nearby you and can pick up your mallets to have them do damage in an AoE as per usual, except whilst the ball is moving with you. This makes her DPS more mobile, and overall I think this ability is incredibly slept on, but it makes sense because it is the best option for a subsume. Her third ability, Metronome, is a duration based buff that will increase your armor and then grant you specific buffs based on actions in time with her music. As stated earlier in the video, if you have her beat selected just so it's a constant beat repeatedly, performing your necessary actions for the buffs in time is very easy because you can just spam it. If you jump in time with your music, you can gain a speed increase, allowing you and your teammates to run around quickly. That's right, these buffs also apply to your teammates whenever they perform the actions as well. Crouching in time with your music will grant you a recastable invisibility buff, so you and your teammates just can be invis 24/7. Shooting in time with the music will grant you a multi-shot buff, and then meleeing will grant you a melee damage buff. These are all incredibly easy to trigger with the correct metronome setup. The fact that these are recastable and also available for your entire team makes this one of the strongest sets of buffs in the entire game. And it doesn't end there. Her fourth ability, Amp, just gives you a massive damage increase for you and your allies who are standing within its radius. It unfortunately isn't really a mobile skill, but it also doubles the damage of any mallets you have out at the same time to compensate. It's a simple ability, it's just an AoE you stand in and you get a huge damage buff because of it, and it synergizes perfectly with her 1 and her 2. Just overall an insane kit with huge amounts of potential across the board. Every single one of her skills is incredibly powerful. So it may be a bit difficult to see why she is considered boring at first, but I think it comes down to one particular skill, which, although you could argue, and of course it's personal preference as to whether or not it's boring, for me personally, it goes across every frame that is invisible. Whilst I find certain invis warframes more fun than others, I do think that Octavia has an issue with it. Something about constantly being able to recast your invisibility having much more safety than the average invis frame such as Loki who can't recast it whilst it's active, and then having a little rollerball that just rolls around, kills everything at any level, very easy to apply buffs. You can start to see where the combination of everything together might sound not only boring, but boring because it's broken. Octavia is so strong that people don't enjoy playing her. Admittedly, I don't think she's as boring as she once was, primarily because she actually has good fashion now, and you can see your Warframe's fashion with the new glow cloaks even when invisible, but also her base kit is so powerful that coming up with cool and creative helmet options kinda doesn't really do too much for your enjoyment. Like, she functions so incredibly well at base that it almost feels redundant to put helmet on her, and when I do, I don't really see the effects being too particularly effective or noticeable in game. They're just sort of there as replacements. Now realistically, what is there to do with a Warframe who has invisibility, speed buffing, melee buffing, weapon buffing, overall damage buffing for you and your teammates, all of these buffs applying to your squad, incredible levels of crowd control and never-ending scaling damage in an AoE. Octavia does everything this game wants, so it almost feels redundant to come up with some cool or creative helmet to build on her. Playing this Warframe also isn't particularly engaging. She has such incredibly high duration that a lot of the time most of the work is going to be done by your mallet and the resonator if you decide to keep it active. The most interactive part of her kit is the fact that, I guess on average, depending on your build and duration, you might have to spam crouch every 30 seconds to get your invis back. And a little anti-synergy is that enemies shooting at your mallet can hit you whenever you are invisible, so staying away from them is something you have to keep in mind. She's also rather easy to build in terms of being versatile. If you want to go with a base kit, the way I build her is a pretty decent amount of duration, good balance of range, a large amount of strength, and a little bit of safety due to the anti-synergy we just mentioned in regards to Mallet and her invis. That safety of course being applied via rolling guard. Due to her large amounts of buffs, you can also select a wide variety of arcanes to synergize with her kit. I really enjoy Molt Augmented and Arcane Crepuscular. You can go with an armor strip setup if you want to go for some stationary mallets and remove Resonator, thus making your damage scale even better into higher levels, but it's overall not too necessary. It's kind of hard to build for an armor strip helmet because Phantom Eyes will overall reduce the DPS of your mallets because enemies you are staring at, although they'll get their armor decayed over time, they'll also have their overall DPS reduced by the slow. And then of course there's Terrify, which is just going to make the enemies run away and not shoot the mallet. It can be done, but overall there's probably better ways to strip enemies armor via weapons. Now, we love using Tesla Bank on this channel. It is of course Vauban's subsume with its augment, which allows the Teslas to spread the damage done to the target that is snared to other enemies nearby, and this scales incredibly well, especially against enemies without armor. Even though there's no particular armor strip within this helmet setup, it of course just spreads the damage of Mallet even more within grouping whenever enemies are shooting it. It's not game breaking, it's just a cool little synergy that I find quite satisfying, and you can use Archon Stretch with it. So now that we have deciphered that her kit is kind of uninspired and boring and just good at everything, at least for the most part, is there any way to really make it more engaging? Well, first off, the obvious being, don't just sit in a corner with a mallet down. You can do this if you want to get some farms on, and it makes sense that people would use this on a regular basis to get their farms going because it just kills enemies for you, and this is of course a very farm based game. Sometimes people just want to chill and watch TV whilst they're playing Warframe. So can you really blame the average player for calling this Warframe boring when what she's best at is doing exactly that, just mindlessly farming? Me personally, I enjoy using her in a bit more of an active setup, keeping my mallet on. I do like her base kit. The synergy between her 1 and her 2 is great. I can have the ball rolling around, murdering everything that I'm not shooting, and then make use of the buffs from my 3 and my 4, staying within the general range of course of amp, and just mowing down enemies whilst my ball takes care of the rest. A little gripe I do have is that I wish I always had the speed buff active without having to jump over and over. Jumping is kind of a nuisance to get the active buff on your speed, but once you get it I think it makes her feel way better, and unfortunately she's just so good at buffing pretty much any weapon you give her that there's real no point in having some specific weapon setup. You can just rock whatever you want because she's going to make it good. That is of course a merit at the end of the day, but her mallet and her resonator together with amp and all of your buffs is already such a strong combination that it means going for some sort of synergistic weapon combo feels unnecessary on her. This is very much a comfort pick Warframe where if you want to get a job done really easily, pretty much 90% of what this game has to offer is going to get blitzed by Octavia. So yes, whilst it is personal preference as to what makes a Warframe boring, I do feel as though Since her release, Octavia's pick rate has never been where it realistically should be for how powerful she is, and that comes down to her kit design. And this low pick rate is honestly the reason why she hasn't gotten nerfed. People just don't be playing Octavia, and usually nerfs come with high pick rates. If you guys have found this video either informative or enjoyable, please feel free to leave a like and sub to the channel. We're getting pretty close to 10k subs soon, and it'll be really a nice milestone to hit. If you didn't enjoy it, then no worries. Let me know what you think could be done in the comments to make Octavia a more fun Warframe without teetering her over the edge to become the next big nerf. Appreciate you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next video.